Hey there everyone, it's Brendan here from the Crypto 101 team, and welcome to our emergency crypto market update. Now there's a lot that's going on in the markets at the moment, and we've seen all of the fear, uncertainty, and doubt that is circulating around out there. So what we wanted to do in this video was add some much needed clarity as to what's not only happening in the macroeconomic landscape, but how all of this affects the crypto market as well. Now, specifically, the big fear out there is all around policy changes and tariffs. How do these things actually affect the crypto markets? Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Should we be buying more crypto? Should we be selling it all off? Should we be fearful that this could actually hurt the market that most of us are invested in? And that's what I want to talk about in today's video. So let's zoom out here and let's actually look at how Bitcoin has been performing so far. So if we move over to a screen share here, we can see that Bitcoin has been outperforming most of the other traditional financial markets since the election. So let's look at this, for example. Well, since election day, Bitcoin is up 16.5%. This is beating gold, which is up 13.4%, and it's certainly beating the SPY, which is down 6.2%, and NASDAQ, which is down 7.4% since this post was created. Now, I'll give you a little bit of a hint here, a little bit of a sneak peek. These are down far more since this post was created, and Bitcoin continues to maintain value. So what if we compare Bitcoin to a lot of the stocks that we know and love? Well, it's certainly outperforming Tesla, Meta, Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Nvidia, all since election day. Now, what if we zoom a little bit back in? There's a lot of people out there that could say, Brendan, this could perform any of those assets since the election. It's been a lot of time since then. Well, let me show you what's happened here just in the last week. Well, here we have NASDAQ. It's down almost 10% in the last week. It's down 9.87%. And then we have the S&P 500 right here, which is down 9.07% last week. So if we go over to the Bitcoin chart and we see how much this is down, well, Bitcoin's only down 4.8% in the last week. And this looks a lot better on the daily chart, so we're going to take a look at that in just a moment. But what this means is that NASDAQ and the S&P 500 are down nearly twice as much as Bitcoin. So despite all this macroeconomic uncertainty, despite all the volatility that we've seen, Bitcoin is actually being half as volatile as the traditional financial indices. And that's something to take note of, and we're going to come back to that. But what if we break this down a little bit further? What if we look at the daily chart? Well, you can see that while the traditional financial markets were actually crashing last week, Bitcoin attempted a breakout. This is the highest point that Bitcoin has hit in almost a month's time, as it was trying to break above the 200, the 20, the 50-day moving averages, break above resistance levels, and it was actually pushing upwards. In fact, it held the same constant support zone of just around $81,000 all of last week. Well, again, what about the traditional financial markets? Does that look like it was holding support last week? No, it wasn't. So what we're seeing here is that Bitcoin is actually performing really, really well. We look at it in the short term like we just saw. The past couple of days, the past week or so, it's outperforming. We look at the midterm, what it's done since election day over the last 6 months or so. It's also outperforming. And then, of course, we all know that over the long term, over the last 3 or so years, over the last 10 years, of course, Bitcoin has been performing a lot better than any of these asset classes as well, as it is one of, if not the top performing asset of our generation. So when we're looking at all of this, we have to understand that Bitcoin is actually being used as a safety measure. It is less volatile in response to everything that is going on. Now, there's a couple of things that need to be understood. Number one, this was all planned from the start. Number two, nothing has changed. Number three, this is temporary. And number four, this has everything to do with macroeconomics and nothing to do with the crypto markets. So let's walk through all of these. Now, Trump has not wavered on his policies at all, right? This is nothing new. He's gotten into office. He's said that he was going to do this since day one. He's stuck to the plan. And guess what? That's exactly what we've seen so far. So this isn't like there's been some sort of massive pivot in policy and that all of this is brand new to us, because it's not. And that's the truth at the end of the day. The other thing that we have to understand here is that this is temporary. This is not going to be something that is drawn out for years and years to come. In fact, we've already started to see a very clear path to resolving this issue, and we got a taste of what that was like today. The other thing that I want to say is, again, This has everything to do with the macroeconomic landscape and what's happening with tariffs, and nothing to do with the crypto markets, which is why we actually see Bitcoin performing so well here at a time where the traditional financial indices are not doing well. And this is a huge change from what we're used to. Because for anyone that has been around in the markets for any kind of extended period of time, you would know that traditionally the indices, NASDAQ, the S&P, the Dow Jones, all of these are notoriously less volatile than Bitcoin. In fact, usually Bitcoin is moving at around 2 to 3 times the rate of whatever these are doing, and not 50% of the rate that what they are doing. So they've actually switched places at a time like this. At a time where there is so much fear, so much uncertainty, so much doubt, people don't know what to expect. Bitcoin is actually half or sometimes even 30% as volatile as a lot of these other traditional financial indices. So people are now looking at Bitcoin. They're saying, hey, this is safe. And the other thing that we've seen here is that Bitcoin has actually responded quite well, and so have the global financial markets, when there is a sign that, hey, things could be resolved. And that's the other part of this. This has all been used as bargaining chips. And what we've started to see here, and we're going to go back to the screen share, is that the fear and greed index hit a record low over here of nearly a 10. We have not seen a fear and greed index reading of a 10 since back in August and June and July of 2022. And now that things are starting to get solved, I actually asked Grok to help me out here. I said, hey, what kind of resolutions have we seen? Which countries have come to the negotiating table? And it's saying, hey, Vietnam, Israel, India, Japan, South Korea, Thailand, Canada, Mexico, the European Union, Taiwan, and all these other ones. And what happened when there was a little bit of a leak in regards to a possible resolution? Well, I'm going to bring us back to the daily chart over here, and we're going to see this. Immediately off the lows, we saw NASDAQ rip nearly 10%. 10% on an index is insane, back to the upside. What happened to the price of Bitcoin? Bitcoin ripped from 74,000 back above 81,000, nearly 9% back to the upside. So it begs the question here. If this was planned from the start, if it's temporary, if it has everything to do with the macroeconomic landscape and Bitcoin has been outperforming the markets, what is going to happen when all of this gets resolved? And I think that's one of the big things that we need to focus on here. Again, the fear and greed index is at record lows. And now that we're starting to see, hey, there could be potential resolutions in sight. We're not saying the bottom's in yet. We're not saying, hey, things can't potentially get worse. But what we are looking at here in the crypto markets is saying, man, we are at a massive area of value, because as we zoom in, as we zoom out, Bitcoin is coming back to its previous all-time high. This is a massive consolidation range. And guess what? When Bitcoin came down here over today, we saw the buyers come in and send this thing back up alongside the news. So now we're looking at this and we're saying, hey, well, actually Bitcoin has been holding value. It's been outperforming the markets. None of this has anything to do with Bitcoin in the first place. So what should the next steps be? Well, in truth, I think Tom Lee actually says it best here. Tom Lee was just on CNBC about a week ago, and they were pressing him a little bit. They were saying, hey, Tom Lee, who's this huge, famous, accredited investor, he runs a gigantic fund, and he's just a legend when it comes to the financial space. They were pressing him on CNBC, and they said, hey, do you still think that Bitcoin thing can have these crazy price predictions? And he's like, I absolutely do. He said, I think that there is a conservative argument that Bitcoin can still hit $150,000. And then he used the words, if not higher. And I could not agree more with him. In fact, I think that what we're starting to see here is that if nothing else happens from this entire fiasco, we're looking at perhaps one of the best arguments for Bitcoin's existence in the first place. Now think about it this way. People have always said, what's going to happen when Bitcoin goes through a 2008 crisis-like scenario? What's going to happen when it goes through a dot-com bubble? What's going to happen when Bitcoin goes through a Great Depression? It's going to disappear. People aren't going to care about it. The inflows are going to stop. And that has all just simply been not true. We have seen billions and billions of dollars flow into the Bitcoin ETFs. The inflows are remaining constant. It's not to say that there are no outflows, but all these big institutional players, all these big retail traders, all of the whales out there, they are still buying Bitcoin in mass. In fact, we actually have true institutions like US-based companies, even foreign companies that are still accumulating Bitcoin, again, by the millions and billions every single day. So now what we're seeing is at a time where we saw NASDAQ drop 5% back to back to back days, triple back to back, even though it's going to end up closing a little bit higher here. The last time that we have seen this was in like the worst of worst market conditions, like 2008 like recession, the Great Depression like stuff. And what we see is that when everyone said, hey, this is going to be the moment when Bitcoin fails, it falters, it's not going to be able to survive this kind of pressure, it's doing the opposite. It's proving all of those haters wrong, and it's performing better than just about everything else. And what we see coming out of this is what I would agree with Tom Lee on. I think that Bitcoin can see by the end of this year, by the end of the cycle, I think we can see $150,000, $200,000. And the truth is, I think that that's actually still on the conservative side. We think that Bitcoin can continue to go a whole lot higher than this. And while maybe not all of it's over yet, today what we got was a glimpse of what will happen once there is actually a working resolution in place. And I think that the honest answer there is I think that there's a whole lot of upside potential, especially for Bitcoin. These kind of crises can't hurt it. Black swan events can't kill it. And what we see is that Bitcoin has become incredibly resilient at a time where people thought that it would stagger. So again, there's a lot going on. We're actually going to be finishing and writing up our newsletter on everything that I just talked about in a whole lot more detail. So if you want to get access to that, you can go to the link or go to the button right below this video, and you're going to get full access to that. So again, if you want to get access to our newsletter, go to that button below or go to the link right below this video, and that's going to bring you to a page where you can get full access to all of that. So thank you all for watching, and as always, we're going to see all of you at the same time, same place next week.